Well, it is that time of the morning where we take a look at some of the stories making the headlines in newspapers around the world. And to help me do that, I'm joined by the Zimbabwean journalist and news analyst at Thamsanqa Zhou. Tam, thanks for coming in again. Let's start with the Nigerian paper This Day Live, which has the headline, "Presidency like good wine, Buhari will get better with age." That's there at the top of the page. Do you agree? Buhari is 72. Does experience of someone that age count for so much more? Are they that much more wise than someone, say, in their 40s or 50s?
It has always been the belief in Africa, from a cultural perspective, oral tradition, that as you get older, you become wiser. But nowadays, information is readily available all over the place, and you don't necessarily need to reach a certain age and experience certain things in life for you to be considered quite knowledgeable and wise, especially when it comes to decision making. But I think it's quite telling that President Buhari, his advisor, media advisor, Femi Adesina, was responding to what President Buhari said when he was in South Africa, speaking to Nigerians who are in the diaspora over there, because he had said, well, he's 72, there are certain things that he won't be able to do. That he could have done if he had been president when he was 33, when he was governor, at the time before he was even president the first time round. So the question here has been whether he is indicating that he cannot do certain things that his office requires. But his office are saying, no, that is not the case. He is wiser than he was at the time, and he is a capable president, and they are citing that he is a very calm and collected president, and Nigeria will benefit from the way that he has always approached things. And also importantly, they say he has never changed. He remains quite incorruptible, because a lot of people in Nigeria are saying that corruption must be at the center of what he does going forward.
Yeah, it's a strange thing for that South African minister to say, given Buhari has just taken power. Anyway, let's move on to China. The China Daily has the headline, "Lawmakers still divided over reform." Well, actually, this vote that was taking place has now happened. They needed a 2/3 majority to pass the bill, but they didn't really get through even to voting, because many people walked out when it looked like, when it became clear that it wasn't going to pass that majority. What happens now then in Hong Kong?
Okay, the story mainly is there have been demonstrations in Hong Kong for about a year or so with Occupy and others who are saying that they don't want Beijing, mainland China, the administration in China, to detect as to who then becomes the chief executive or run Hong Kong. And the pro-Beijing government were making proposals that they took to Parliament that needed 2/3 majority, where they were saying, well, every citizen who is eligible to vote in Hong Kong must be able to vote. But those that were opposing that were saying that is not enough. What they disagree with primarily is that Beijing will then come up with the selection or short list of candidates that they will then vote for. So they refused to accept that. So about 27, 28 MPs were already saying no, and that meant the 2/3 majority was never going to be reached. So the majority, just about an hour or so ago, the majority of the pro-Beijing government people walked out. And then the whole voting process simply became one for the 38 that had remained, with the 28 voting no. So that is not passing. So what happens going forward? There will be more conflicts, more discussions. Those that are opposed to Beijing giving a short list will continue in their fight. There are demonstrations as we speak. It's difficult to know how those will continue, but it's going to be a very difficult time for Hong Kong.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, isn't it? Because in China and Beijing, they're not used to having votes, the government by which they know they will pass. They're not used to, when votes happen, everyone votes the right way, the way the government wants them to vote. So it's going to be very interesting how Beijing reacts to this news that people have gone against the wishes of them.
Yeah, but Chief Secretary Lam would be saying that, well, we gave the Hong Kong people an opportunity to vote, and that opportunity was denied by the leadership of the opposition and those that are opposed to that. But we don't know. I mean, some people will argue that a step would have been a better thing. Let the people in Hong Kong have the ability to vote for whoever they want, even if it means that that person comes from a short list, because that might be another step that changes later. So it's difficult to know how Beijing will react, but they will not be happy with the result. You
say vote for whoever they want, but yeah, it's different when there's
as long as they are on the list
that are approved.
Vote for whoever you want, as long as they are part of this list. But I mean, that happens even in the West. I mean, the Labour Party in the United Kingdom were also complaining that the members of Parliament, what you call the Parliamentary Labour Party, will select a few. I mean, 1 or 2 or whatever, 4 people that they want, and then the rest of the party members will then be forced to choose from that selection. So it's not unique to China or to Hong Kong.
Yeah. Let's go to Russia. Moscow Times. Russia's Crisis Clouds Forums start. This is the 19th St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. And among the big-name Western executives who are attending are the heads of BP, Total and Shell. So a lot of people are not attending this. Obviously, many heads of state due to Russia's actions in Crimea. But despite all the political anger from the West, it's clear that the massive energy reserves which Russia has, they know they can rely on that, don't they, to get them through situations like this. They'll always have these firms, BP, Shell, Total. They won't want to anger Moscow. They won't want to anger those people and lose those big contracts.
I think there's the fact that Russia has the resources. But there's also the bigger issue that most of these companies already have contracts, and they need to honor their contracts. And the third thing is that the West depends, well, not exclusively, but there is a lot of dependency or interdependency between the West and Russia in terms of the gas supplies, oil, and all these kind of things. So it's difficult to know whether most of these companies are thinking this is going to be a short-term thing, or they will follow politics and begin to divest from Russia and make sure that they are not at risk when it comes to the next investment.
Well, let's move on to the UK paper, The Guardian, which has the headline, Greece can't pay, won't pay, and a picture of Alexis Tsipras there. The rhetoric has shifted recently, hasn't it? Greece's central bank now saying an EU exit is possible. How worrying is that? Because Greece is always the positive, optimistic one in these cases, or it has been for so long, and now it seems like that's changing.
It's worrying to Juncker and Draghi and others who believe in the Eurozone and making sure they want to make sure that it remains intact. For the people in Greece, though, I think it's, I heard one Greek person yesterday saying this is quite depressing. But for them, they are not sure whether staying is better than being out. Because I think what Tsipras and the others are opting for is to say, well, let's try being out and see whether that is going to work. Because what they don't want is for Greece to be treated as if they have committed one of the biggest crimes in the world. And they are saying, well, you cannot make people suffer simply because the economics of the past did not go well. And this is where they are. So it's difficult to know where this is going. But the creditors are worried because provisions of bad debt is never a good thing because they will want their money anyway at some point. And so Greece are saying, well, if you want your money, you need to begin to respect Greece as a sovereign country, or otherwise you're not getting your money at all.
Yeah, it's a very hard situation. And finally, the Oman Daily Observer, which has the headline, First Day of Ramadan Today, an annual event, obviously, which affects more than a quarter of the world's population. But for people, Tam, who aren't Muslim, this event passes most people by sort of unnoticed. Just how much do people taking part in Ramadan, how much do they have to sacrifice to take part in this yearly ritual? How big an effect does it have on their lives?
It goes on for a month. It is not easy. It's difficult. Of course, the bottom line is depending on when the sun rises and when the sun sets, there's a timetable, a very clear timetable. You cannot eat or take certain certain food within a certain number of hours, well, you break fast, but there are also strict times where you can actually do that. Some of the times are during the night. So it's not easy. It's physically taxing. There's a lot of good things that happen, like if you're a Muslim and you're fasting, you need to choose a charity of your own choice that you can donate to during the course of this time. But I think a lot of people in the West are beginning to realize what goes on and respect the fact that there is Ramadan. Even in times of war and conflict, people stop. But if you are a sports person or those that have got medical conditions, it can be very tough. Some, depending on what medical condition people have, they can be excused or exempt from some of the things that go on.
Yeah, I was going to say, as can the children, as can the elderly, can sometimes opt out of that. Tam, all very interesting. Thank you very much indeed for coming in.